We're going to do more of a traditional panel discussion for this first panel. And I'd also like to introduce Dr. Tammy Walker, who I guess hasn't been called doctor since she's no longer a college professor. And she is actually, she is the one that keeps us going as far as the idea for Women of Reason, and at our meetings she is always the organized one, while Ann Crumpacker and I are all just like, woo, let's talk about, this, that, and the other thing. She'll be like, okay, that was really funny, let's get back on task now. So Tammy Walker is going to be our chair.
What an atheist woman really wants. And the genesis of this panel came about from us thinking about, well, we've got this women's group. Can y'all hear me?
No.
I have to put the microphone in front of my face. Okay. Is this a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this panel came out of a question that we were asking ourselves when we first started We're Women of Reason Dallas. What can we do for the women in the group? What can we do for women who are already atheists? What can we do for women who are on the border, not sure, maybe still very involved in a church, thinking, maybe I don't belong here, but who aren't sure where to go? The questions that we're really thinking about today is, what do atheist, freethinker, and skeptical women want from the atheist, freethought, and skeptic movements? We might not answer this question fully today, but the questions we do address in this panel clarify what women might want, what we can walk away with, go back to our respective groups, and do in order to make a more welcoming environment for women. Okay. And just as a reminder, we'll have links on the website after the conference with all of the resources, so if somebody mentions a blog or something, we'll try to use that. And I'd like to introduce our fabulous panelists. I'm so excited to have them all here. Elyse Anders, she started the Women Thinking Free Foundation. She's in charge of Hug Me, I'm Vaccinated, and she's a skeptic and also a mother of two. Melanie Clemmer is our outreach director for FOFD, and she's done a ton of work for both Word and the F3 conference. Bridgette Gaudette, she's Vice President of Outreach for Secular Women, former Florida State Director for American Atheists. She's in Orlando Freethinkers and Humanists, Black Non-Believers in Metro Orlando, Young Nonprofit Professionals Network, Humanists of Florida Association, Foundation Beyond Belief, and American Atheists, of course. And Carmen Tinker, she founded Secular Humanists of SMU, and this is the first student organization at the University for non-religious students. So pretty impressive there. So let's start with the women who are already in the movement. Some of you out there, some of us up here. What can free-thought atheist skeptic groups do in order to support their current female membership?
Yeah, since I am holding the microphone, what we've been doing for Fellowship of Freethought and the Dallas Plano, and we're hoping to get some of the other Metroplex groups in, is to we have 2 social meetups a month, and we've basically tried to make them women-only meetups so that women can have a safe place to discuss issues unique to women. Haven't gotten we've gotten lots and lots of encouragement from Fellowship of Freethought on the Dallas Plano meetup. I have had to cope with a few trolls that are saying, why are you creating this group to exclude men? And I was able to get through to at least one troll. This person actually had a legitimate question and was very nice. And I was actually, when I was answering this person's question, I was sitting at my gym in the lounge. I could not work out because somebody was wrong on the internet, and they were on my phone trying so, and because I was at my gym, I said, well, it's kind of like the women-only saunas, etc., that we have at my gym. It's like everybody has access to this gym, everybody has access to the cardio equipment, the weights, etc., but there are some people who don't want to be naked in front of other people. And so we have created a space for us to be emotionally vulnerable, emotionally naked with each other. And the moment I turned the conversation to nudity, he got it. That's a really good analogy and stuff. So I'll respect your privacy. So that's one of the things that we've done. We have trying to keep a safe space in social meetups, and we've also created a closed or a private Facebook group for women of reason, women of reason Dallas, not women of reason Metroplex, because as Ann said, we would have been were. But even if you're not part of the Metroplex, ask me about it, and I would be happy to add you to our group on Facebook as well.
When I started Secular Woman, we realized before that there was no national organization that was specifically focused for secular women. So we had a lot of ideas, what people need, and we came up with a couple things. One, if you look at, we kind of took the temperature of a lot of the other organizations and we compared like the gender diversity, and it was overwhelmingly male as far as leadership, speakers, conference attendees, things like that. So we said, okay, what can we do to address that? How can we help these women get more involved? So we created an all-female speakers bureau, and we included a lot of people that you don't always see at the conventions. There are certain people, certain authors, certain bloggers that you see a lot, and they're great. We love their stories. We wanted to kind of introduce some people that maybe you didn't know, maybe that are like me, that aren't the most articulate or charismatic person, but people still want to hear their story. So we also, it's also very difficult for women a lot of times to afford to go to conferences. You have to worry about childcare and paying for them, some are $200-300. So we're working with Camp Quest and other organizations to provide more childcare. We are paying for travel grants to get women to these conferences. And yeah.
And I think the Speakers Bureau is a really, really big deal. Because one thing that we found brings women in is putting women on the stage. Women will show up to see men speak, but the more women you show in the movement, the more women you highlight in the movement, the more women you show are involved, the more women relate to the movement. If I see a woman on the stage, I'm more likely to think, oh, I am a part of what's going on, as opposed to if I show up at a conference and it's 30 dudes. I mean, I can relate to them, but it's the same way that no guy is going to go to a conference where there's 30 women speakers. Sorry, okay, not no guy, but but I mean, you guys, I think the men in this room understand that it's not a typical situation for a man to go to a conference where it's all women speakers. But it is a typical thing for a woman to be expected to go to a conference where it's all male speakers. And then you hear like, oh, but if you're gonna bring women up, and then you're taking away jobs from really smart white dudes, and they're just not as qualified, and why are we putting, as if women in the movement really aren't qualified to get on the stage and talk. Because plenty of us are, maybe even more qualified than the men that are on the circuit all the time. And it's time that we highlighted them and showed their voices and showed women of the world that they belong here, that they have a voice and they have a reason to be here, and that we care about them.
And I think it's important to keep in mind with having not just speaker events, but also normal meetings, discussions, social events, to keep everything more gender neutral and have a balance between the guys and the girls. Like last year at Secular Humanists at SMU, most of the professors that we had come in and talk were male professors. And that just happened to be more often because they were the professors that were easier to convince to come in and have topics that were relevant to our group. But I think think it's very important to keep in mind having a good balance between the males and the females in terms of who you're working with and what topics you're working with, so that it's more appealing for everyone. And I think it's also important to bring the population of your group in mind and to work very hard to increase the female proportion in groups. I know it's not quite as important with some of the more adult groups in the area, but a lot of the college organizations are very highly male. And for example, the first group meeting I went to at the University of Texas at Dallas, I think I was one of 4 women in a group of 40, 50 people. It was kind of uncomfortable. And it'd be a lot easier to start bringing more people in, have them more involved if they don't have that feeling of discomfort because there aren't any women around.
Thank you. So that covers the women who might already be skeptical, atheists. What about some concrete steps that Freethought atheist skeptic groups can take to draw women who are already on that border but maybe don't actively participate? Because I'm thinking if you're laying down $300 to go to a conference, you're pretty much already an atheist. So what about the people who are kind of on the borderline, maybe still attend church, reluctant to let that go?
I think the number one role in doing that is to, when you're trying to expand membership in general, to emphasize the women that are already in your group and the women-centered things that your group does. Like, we have a women's-only meetup social group. Emphasize that when you're advertising for more new members. And also go to the places when you're looking to advertise that the kind of woman you're looking for would go. You know, go to like a preschool if you're trying to talk to like a PTA group or something and mention that you're in that kind of group and try to get more people to join that way. And just emphasize the women that are already in your group and help attract more.
And I think that if you have a group that discusses topics, talking about topics that matter to women, like maybe this one, it would help. I mean, if I care about a subject, like for me, my main kind of niche is vaccines, and that really does focus on women. But you know, when you're talking about vaccines, people have opinions and people feel kind of informed, but it's a really interesting conversation for pretty much everybody to have. Everybody has an opinion, not everybody is that informed, and people will come out to find out information. So whether, you know, they agree with you or disagree with you or don't know what to think, if you're putting out these things that they're already thinking about, that they may or may not be informed about what they're interested in, they'll show up.
I think about a lot of things from a marketing standpoint because that's my primary job as a secular woman. And if you look at even the name we chose, we were trying to be a little bit more inclusive, maybe not as scary as atheist women, because a lot of women that are kind of not knowing how they feel, they might not be ready for that label, we're trying to get them in as well. So as far as when you name the group, and also like even when you're advertising, make sure your picture is diverse. Women that see a picture with more women on like a flyer or something are more likely to go to it. It's kind of like what she was saying about knowing their speakers involved. Literally, there have been studies that show if like, I think it's more than 50% of the people pictured on a brochure are women, the woman is more likely to attend the conference or whatever like that. So think about the marketing. It might seem kind of, it's not talking about the deeper philosophy, but if we're trying to get all these people involved, make sure when they look at this or look at the situation, they're, you know, relatable, your group, and you're not too scary with the atheist group.
And of course, as outreach director of Fellowship of Freethought, I like to approach things from a community outreach perspective. I think if we find ways to show that we are really good people, you know, that we don't really have horns, and we find ways to interact and do positive things in the community, and maybe even coming up with some more women-focused things. Like next month, I'm hoping to do a drive for the women and children who live at Mosaic House, which is an organization that helps people get out of human trafficking situations. And so finding just ways to get other women involved in doing things. I know I personally get to know people better when I'm working alongside them, as opposed to something that's just purely social all the time. So finding ways for everybody to get involved, get their really get their hands dirty, so to speak, and people can say, hey, these people really are good. They care about women as well.
So I want to ask a follow-up question, because that I'm sure you've all heard on the blogosphere, the atheism versus atheism plus, the concern with adding social justice, adding environmental issues, adding broader questions, broader concerns to the atheism movement, and how that affects the way other people see the atheist movement, and how even people in the atheist movement see it. So I'm wondering if you could address that as well, if that's something that women should embrace in terms of that specific label, or just we're women, this is what we do.
Yeah, and I'm going to be the first to admit that I am on the fence about that, because I have been as much as I like labels, I also like to have a variety of labels. And so it's like, are you an atheist? Well, I don't believe there's a deity, so yes, I am. Are you a humanist? Yes, I care about helping my fellow human beings. Are you a feminist? Yes, I go for women's rights. So as far as like, do we really need this other label to sort of pinpoint well, okay, you're an atheist and you do actually think that human rights are important. Would it be kind of nice to be able to pick somebody out that way, as opposed to people that just want to come to our atheist meetups and talk about whether Star Wars is better than Star Trek or vice versa? That I'm kind of leaning towards like, yes, we do need that distinction, but I'm still on the fence about it myself. So hopefully, I'm sure these ladies will be much more articulate than me on that.
She mirrored my thoughts exactly, so I'm gonna pass.
It's so, there's so much about, I whether you want to take on the label yourself, I don't care. What I do care about is whether or not you care about other people. If you want to go around and talk about how there's no God and that's like the most important thing in the world, that's fine. But for me, okay, there's no God, and religion does horrible things to people, and just getting rid of God doesn't change anything. We need to change all of the other things that are happening to people because of religion, and those things don't go away just because you drop God. And we see that happening all over the internet right now, because there's atheists that are really terrible people. And so that's a problem, and we need to address that. And if you don't care about that, that's your own bag. I think you're a bad person, but you don't care what I think. And so atheism plus, not atheism plus, I don't know. I don't think that the plus matters that much to everybody else. I think it's something that you have to decide. Is this a badge that I want to wear? And somebody says, no, it doesn't. The plus itself doesn't make you a bad person. It's whether or not you agree with the things that the plus stands for.
With this issue with our group, it's kind of a lot related to the name of our group. We aren't Secular Student Alliance, we aren't atheists at SMU, we're secular humanists at SMU. Because when we were talking about what we wanted in a group, we wanted to focus on more being good without religion, the secular side, the humanism side, and not just lack of God. And because of that, our focus in terms of topics and speakers is a lot more broad on a lot of the social issues. And who we encourage to come to our groups is not strictly the atheists. It's anyone that would fall under the category of secular and or humanism. So for us, the whole distinction between atheist and atheist plus is not really that big of an issue, because the focus on atheism title is not a big issue.
I think the difference between atheism and atheism plus is basically activism. And I think that's really what the plus should be is, are we activists or are we just a group that wants to think about the fact that there's no God? And I'm not saying that that's, it's unimportant to congregate with like-minded people, especially in a place like Texas. It's very, very religious, but that's the difference. Religious, but that's the difference.
So I just wanted to note that we welcome audience questions. Maybe if you can give his hand, passing out some note cards. Sorry, let me just spring that on you, Ann. If you have any questions, write them down, and I will ask Ann to pick those up and address those as well. So let me just go on to my next question. How much of the internecine madness that we've seen, the conflicts between men and women on the blogosphere, how much of that imbalance just a matter of perception, and how much do you think it is a matter of in real life? So I guess I'm asking for what's happening on the internet versus what's happening in real life, and how would that affect women especially?
Well, I'm a skeptic, so maybe I'm not qualified to answer this question. But I mean, for me, what happens on the internet is, it is directly related to what happens in my real life, because this is what I do.
So maybe we should say, should we even draw that line? Is there a distinction between what's happening on the internet versus?
Well, I mean, for me, there's not. And what's happening on the internet is, right now, it's horrible. And I've stepped away from a lot of things this summer for health reasons, but I think if those health things hadn't happened, I would be stepping away from things for a little bit right now, because things, there's no word to describe how awful the hostility is towards a skeptic right now. Rebecca just put up a page called The Wall of Hate, and it's like just pages and pages of people that want to rape her, and this is the kind of stuff that we get every day. And it's to the point where I used to be somebody who is really excited to go out to skeptic events. I was really excited to go out and socialize with like-minded people, and now I'm not interested. Like, as soon as I see oh, there's an event nearby, oh my God, there's gonna be people there, and I don't know who's gonna be there, and I don't know what's gonna happen, and I don't know what kind of confrontation I'm gonna be a part of, I don't wanna go. And that's not the person that I used to be. I used to be, somebody once described me as a skeptic who was turned up to 11. I was passionate and I was ready to go, and I wanted to do nothing but just be around skeptics all day, and now I don't want that. And I think that's awful. And it's not that I won't keep fighting, but it's definitely, and I'm somebody who loves the movement, and I don't want to be a part of it. So I don't know what's happening to other women. I don't know if that's the way other people feel, but I mean, I'm obviously, being in solidarity with Rebecca Watson very much is, what's the word? It's like being a target. and I sometimes I've said that I very much feel like we are at war. And it's a terrible feeling. So you guys face that, okay?
Elyse comes from a very unique perspective, because she has been, part of the group that's been the brunt of it. And my group being so new, I anticipate that happening pretty soon, though, honestly, sadly no. But I look at, my husband is an atheist, but he's not on Facebook, he's not involved in social media, he doesn't read any of the blogs. So I'm trying to think of it, like my perspective, I'm very much involved in all that too, and I feel for everybody that's involved, and I want to speak out, and it's been very disheartening seeing this kind of divide that's been going on. But I don't think it's affecting people that aren't as involved in social media. Although these things have been brought up, like in the Guardian magazine, newspaper, so it's getting into mainstream media, so it means that other people are kind of looking at, you know, the secular movement and wondering what's going on. Are we about, you know, women's issues and feminism? And so I think it is starting to bleed over, but because I'm so like involved in that, we need things like this. This conference is exactly what we need to build women up and make sure, you know, this is a safe place where we can talk, discuss issues, and it's not all about, you know, it seems like the loudest people, the ignorant ones have the biggest voices. Even if it's just 5 of them, they sound like a million. So it becomes overwhelming, but that's not what 99.9% of us are. And one thing that's also important is we need to be more vocal in support of, you know, against the bullies and in support of the people that are bullying them, you know? So it's not enough to just say, oh, that's bad, but, you know, maybe we do need to start calling people out and, you know, banning them. I mean, maybe it's extreme, I don't know, but I don't know.
I think the only thing that I would have to add to that, and I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do this, but to somehow find ways to remove the anonymity. Because one of the things that I've noticed as far as dealing with our Women of Reason group is not yet its own meetup. We are affiliated with Fellowship of Freethought, and Dallas Plano is where I do the cross-listing. And in Fellowship of Freethought, you know, we have a variety, we have our gathering, we have our outreach activities, social meetups, where we actually, you know, not just see each other on the internet, so to speak, we actually see people face to face. And it's like, so far, whenever I post our meetups, I've gotten nothing but support from Fellowship of Freethought. And it's the Dallas Plano Atheist meetup is where I've been getting most of the pushback. In the Dallas Plano Atheist meetup, most of that meetup is just meeting for dinner on Tuesday nights. So I mean, we're not completely anonymous, but the people who have been giving me pushback are people that I haven't even seen at a Tuesday night dinner. And I mean, and I'm usually if there's 4 Tuesdays in a month, you know, I am at that dinner 3 out of 4 Tuesdays, if not all 4. So, you know, I'm still getting that, well, because I don't know you, I don't know, I haven't acknowledged that you are a real person. That's where I'm getting most of the snark. And actually, there was an incident that I dragged Elyse into it, and I don't know that I've ever gotten it, so I'm apologizing now. I had posted something on my Facebook wall that was actually a post that she wrote about something that happened to her at a conference, and a person who has since been unfriended and blocked from Facebook because he couldn't control himself from making comments about women on my wall. He basically had a bunch of mean things to say about Skeptic. And I basically tagged Elyse in a comment and said, oh, by the way, you know, she is just this wonderful person that has done all of this stuff for skepticism, and, you know, she's also, you know, I made her look really good, I hope, and stuff. And in other words, I said, hey, this is a real person with real feelings, with a real family that has done lots of real things that you are attacking there. And then I did have something not very nice to say about him, and actually he did come back, and he still wasn't completely, but there was definitely a bunch of backpedaling. He did try to make it look like me that was causing all of the drama and stuff like that, but after pointing out that this is a real person, you know, some people are able to start backing off and actually think, you know, like, hey, I'm not just attacking, you know, what I see as a version of feminism that I like when I say these things, I'm actually making comments about real people. So that's what I have to answer.
Unfortunately, that doesn't always work. Because there was, no, well, I mean, I just mean like humanizing it. I don't know if you guys heard about what happened to Amy Davis-Roth, Surly Remix at TAM. Despite the fact that she was there in person, people were harassing her. And actually, to avoid harassing her to her face, a lot of times they created fake Twitter accounts and started tweeting horrible things to her during the breaks. And they made fake Surly Remix that had quotes that mocked things she said on Twitter. So sometimes people are just horrible. So, it amazes me how much effort people put into hating the skeptics. We've been working, and I don't know if we have it up or not. We put up a page where we actually list like all of the good things we've done for skepticism. And we've been called a clique, which is ridiculous because what dude blog gets called a clique for not including every single dude in skepticism as a writer? Seriously? And we've actually, in the years that it's been around since I think 2006, Rebecca has featured 120 different women writers. So it's not like she's out there silencing women that she doesn't like. But you'd think that the amount of effort that people put into hating us, if people took half of that, like, okay, just spend half of that time hating us and use the other half of that time to do something productive, we could change the fucking world. I mean,
I've got dinners that I make for people with AIDS and HIV. It's like,
seriously, do something good. Do something productive. I don't care if it's skepticism. I don't care if you're donating to charity. Take 10 minutes from your hate time and go do something good for the world. Because as we learned in the last talk, it's not meaningful.
Thank you all for some really great questions. Unfortunately, we can't get to all of them, but I've kind of grouped them together in things people seem to be interested in. And have a lot about looking at the question from a man's point of view. White male privilege exists, and see, I'm just reading 3 different cards at the same time, sorry about that. Basically, the question boils down to this one. How can the male majority make it a safe place for women? What can men do to make things better for women?
Treat us with respect. I think that's a nice place to start. Stop with the sexist jokes. When you hear a sexist joke, call it out. When you hear a sexist comment, call it out. Don't let people talk about violence towards women. There's a really great blog out there that I may have started. It's actually it's part of the Women Thinking Inc. It's part of my organization, but we started this blog, and it's written by my white cisgender heterosexual friend Sasha Pixley, and I love him, and it's called More Than Men, and it's a project that is actually an outreach effort for all of the men in skepticism, atheism, to come out and be allies. And so if you want to get involved, all you have to do is contact him. You can write something, you can record something, anything that can be made into something you can post on the internet that is a way to say, dudes, stop that. Do it. And we'll get it out there. And the more people that speak out, the more we get. Surly Amy just did a series of leaders in the skeptical and atheist movements where they wrote blog posts for Skeptic, and they condemn the violence towards women. But you don't have to be a leader in the movement to make a difference. You can just add to the voices and make yourself a leader. That was so true.
That's
Well, she basically covered all of that. I don't know how many of y'all seen this little thing going around the internet. There's 10 tips on how not to rape a woman. And it's basically 10 different ways of saying don't rape. And it's just as simple as not doing stuff. If you call people out, and you don't even have to go out of your way to do stuff. Just be yourself and don't offend other people.
And on the subject of, she brought up white male privilege, I think part of the issue is kind of acknowledging that it really exists. A lot of men, no offense guys, they don't want to acknowledge that there is some privilege that go along with it. Exactly. But you just acknowledge it exists and, work accordingly, act accordingly. And we all have experienced different kinds of privilege. I came from actually a upper middle class family, so that gives me a little bit more privilege than someone else might have. And I acknowledge that, and I keep my mouth shut when something doesn't have to do with me, because I come from that background. So I think that, men and women, we all need to work on that.
And I would have to add to that, and this is something that I guess just to be a decent human being, work on your listening skills. So when you're listening to another person, are you really listening, or are you merely just rehearsing the response that you're going to give to whatever you think they're talking about? And so, and especially if the guys, if the woman in your life is upset about something that you may be, because of privilege, because of a different life experience, you maybe don't quite understand why this is so upsetting. It's like just acknowledging, like, I still see you as a rational person, and because I think you are a rational, intelligent person, there must be something to you being upset about this. And so and like just in everyday conversation, I know there's lots of times where I have to remind myself, it's like I really need to be listening to another person, not just rehearsing my next line. But I think that goes a long way in interactions between men and women, especially when the issues are sensitive.
So next question says, I see how having a women-only group is important now, as women are underrepresented and often mistreated. I'm curious about the future. Do you see women-only groups as a temporary fix to current inequities, or as a permanent fixture in the Freethought movement?
Yes. I see it as a temporary thing, but I don't have a time limit on the temporary. Yeah. So in geological terms, yeah, that was good. I think maybe it may also depend on, it may have to be something that each individual group decides it. In the Fellowship of Freethought, we are, the last I checked, I think we are about 50% women, and we have women represented on the leadership board. With the Dallas Plano group, I know that tends to be much more male-oriented. So it's like I could see it going away in Fellowship of Freethought, maybe in slightly less geological terms. In some of the other groups, I think it is going to be more of a long-term thing.
I actually see it as a permanent fixture. I think men and women are always going to be different. There are certain things that women can get together and talk about that a man just won't understand, and then you bring in the extra pressures of being an atheist woman or a secular woman. I think that it brings with it unique experiences. I think the same, there will probably always be like black atheist groups and LGBT, LGBT. Yeah, those. We will always have those, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I see it as probably wrong.
I really think that it's one of those things that it's hard to know. I think you can only make that decision with knowledge of how the future is going to be, which I happen to not have. And you know, I mean, maybe.
I think looking at it on the college level, the whole idea of a separate group just for the females is not really hugely practical, especially at a more small-sized college like the one I'm from. So the focus at our group level should be more on having a general group and maybe add special activities on the side for the females, rather than a completely separate group. We'd be dividing your resources, dividing your time, and your outreach to the rest of the campus.
I changed my answer. Because I was thinking about us internally, and I was thinking about, you know, the world. And, you know, when you think about like, yeah, okay, so we progress and we get to the point where we're 50%, women are still gonna be treated like shit outside of our group, and we're still gonna be below men outside of our group, and churches are still gonna work to keep women down and keep women out of positions of power and keep them pregnant, and they're gonna need us. So yeah.
And I was thinking, you know, even if the people that are involved now, we can get to that really good place. Like you said, there's going to be new people coming in, women that are coming. My sister-in-law converted to Islam, and she recently has decided she wants to stop wearing the hijab, and she really needs that support. And she's been really, you know, supportive of my group. And I think that women will always have that extra little problem, you know, those extra little problems that they'll have to deal with, and then we'll kind of need that support system. And sometimes it's easier going from a group like that, a high control group especially, to a place that with other women that can relate to you, and maybe it's a little easier, especially when you've been oppressed by men. Sometimes you have, like, you know, a bad feel about men, you're not as comfortable, especially talking about something like this. So I think we'll probably always need specialized groups.
Talking about geological eras, I'm now imagining in the Creation Museum, there's the, some of you have probably already seen this model of all the layers, and there's like random things that shouldn't be in the layers of the layers, and I'm thinking of down there seeing the flyer for the women's group. A lot of the audience questions have to do with what can we as free-thinking, skeptical atheist women, what can we say to our religious friends or people in the religious community to help encourage them to join?
You can't, I mean, if they're ready to join, they will. But think about the last time one of your friends tried to talk you into becoming a vegetarian. And that's really less of a big deal than giving up your God. So, I mean, you can talk to them and you can have rational, calm, and respectful conversations, but I would say don't pressure them and don't have an expectation that you're going to change that. What I would work on more is if your friends have these, like, you know, weird ideas, like that gay people are bad, or that women shouldn't take birth control. Work on those things, because those are the bigger deal issues than whether or not they actually believe that a God exists. It's more important that they worry about the things that are actually happening on Earth, and that you can change their minds on that. And then if they're ready to come around, they will. But once you start knocking out all those smaller things, a lot of times that's, you know, the God goes away because it's all of those other things that are keeping up there, so to speak.
I think it's just important for us to be out and visible. If you read my Facebook or Twitter, you know how I feel about a lot of things. You know how active I am in the atheist community. And I have gotten a lot of Christian friends asking me questions that I don't think they would have otherwise, especially, you know, with me being a Black female. It's very rare to find another Black atheist, and gets a lot of attention. My friends are constantly asking me questions, well, how does your family deal with that? How do you do that? So I think just me being out and open will bring people in, and I think that's important.
In our group, we've talked a lot about just opening up the dialogue with different religious people and starting on individual levels, or maybe collaborating with our group with other religious groups on campus. And start on things that are not controversial topics. Like last year, we had a discussion about one of the books in the Bible from a literary, not ethical, not content, whether it's true or not, but a literary viewpoint. And it was led by one of the religious friends of our group members. And starting on that level of not controversial topics, not arguing, but just working together and discussing common interests in some way can lead to more progressive steps like, arguing over birth control in that way. And establishing a relationship first can help you get to the more difficult steps.
And I'm just going to basically build on what Carmen said as far as finding outreach activities that we can do together, where we can say together, here is how we are going to make the world a better place. And actually finding ways to help people get to know, like if there's somebody that's like, I think all gay people are bad, or I think that, I can't deal with such and such a group, actually finding ways to get them to know more people, get their worlds to be a little bit bigger, and they will start to find, it's like, well, if I really want to be the decent human being that I say I am, if I really, and they may find that if they really want to be the Christian that's loving, that they say they are, then they may no longer be able to be a Christian. And also just whether it's on Facebook or whatever, it's Shirley. We'll call names. What was I talking about? So that that show that you are willing to openly and honestly answer questions. I did actually get a Facebook email from a friend of mine who is a pastor in Italy, where he did a church plant, and the question was talking about can I be against same-sex marriage and still show God's love to other people. And I mean, he basically started out by saying, hi, you're like one of the few liberal friends I have, and can we talk about it? I was like, oh good, I get to be the token liberal. But it was like, he asked me that question because he knew me and knew that I was going to be nice and thoughtful and not just attacking him back, that we could actually have a legitimate discussion.
I'd really like to end on a positive note, and one of the questions that I wanted to end with is what successful measures, basically be positive as well, have you seen that would draw in more women? And let me tie that to an audience question. We got a question from an officer at a local student group who says, what can we do to promote women's involvement in our group? So those two things tied together. Thoughts?
I think just for women of reason, Dallas, it has been that creating that safe space for women to talk has been our major positive contribution for getting women involved. And I would also like to think that the first annual Women of Reason conference has also been a positive way to get people involved. So.
I think it's just making sure women are visible, having female speakers, talking about parenting, and don't ignore the women, those of us that don't have children, so acknowledge us too. But I think it's just showing the variety within your group and encouraging them to be there.
you know, I came to Dallas last year from Chicago, and when I got involved in skepticism in Chicago, I would start these meetups. I started organizing meetups, and it would be like me and 10 guys, me and 15 guys, and it was guys. It was always like me and guys, and so like I always had to have my husband with me because there's always like, you know, 2 totally creepy guys that are there, and then we did something. We organized Skeptic Camp. And then the person who ran the Chicago Skeptics meetup ended up moving to Texas. And a woman stepped up and started organizing the Chicago Skeptics group. And after Skeptic Camp happened, and after Dr. Jen took over Chicago Skeptics, it is 50-50, and it's a huge group, and it's flourishing, and it's one of the most popular skeptic groups in the country, and they're doing great. So it really is about just having women step up. And if you think you're waiting for somebody to step up and organize your women, do it, because I am not qualified to do anything. And I organized a skeptic camp for women. And I organize these meetups, and so you can just do it. And if you don't know what you're doing, do it anyway, and then somebody's gonna help you when you totally screw up. You're not gonna be left, and then if nobody helps you and you totally screw up, and nobody showed up, then nobody saw your mistake, so no big deal, right? So, I mean, if you're not seeing what you want, make it happen. That's all you have to do, because, you know, if you're waiting for someone to do it, you are someone.
Something I've noticed with our group is that when we have new members come to meetings, if it's a female, they always come with a friend. And if it's a male, more often than not, they come by themselves. So one thing to do would be encourage the members you already have to go out and find a friend. Maybe not someone who would be a perfect candidate, but someone that might come and realize they enjoy it, or might come and realize, oh, I know someone that would be perfect for this group. Just encourage social networking to encourage members to come.
I'm not on this panel, but I have an opinion, and I can't stand it any longer. Go have some fun. I mean, what's wrong with fun? Does everything have to be about atheism? I mean, we agree about that. So let's go swing dancing. I mean, let's go have a good time. And I think when you start doing that, you do activities that women, you know, respond to, then you'll have more women. It doesn't have to all be about Star Trek.
Does too. I wanted to add something to what Bridgette said. I think another thing that we as free-thinking women's group have to offer, when I was I admit it. I went and looked at like the Women of Faith conference, website, because I was just, wanting to see what their theme was, and you can just tell from looking at just at their website. It's like, well, if you are not married, if you are not straight, if you do not have children, you're not a woman. I mean, this is seriously what comes across, and so, one of the things that I think we've done an excellent job on, it's like you don't have to have human children, you don't even have to have pets, you don't have to be married, you don't have to be partnered, and you are still a good human being that has a lot to offer, and I think that's something that we can really offer to the women out there that a lot of churches cannot.
Thank you so much, and thank you for
And we're gonna take a 15-minute break.
15-minute break. Our next talk starts at 3:15.
Yes. And Noel George will be our next speaker. So we'll see you back in 15 minutes.